So let's get back to it. Chapter 22. The next thing the Sterlings heard was that Valancy had been seen with Barney Snaith in a movie theater in Port Lawrence, and after it at supper in a Chinese restaurant there. This was quite true, and no one was more surprised at it than Valancy herself. Let's go! Let's go! Girl got a date! Girl got a date! Let's go now! Oh, come on, someone's gotta get smooched here. Someone has to get smooched. Barney had come along in Lady Jane one dim twilight and told Valancy unceremoniously if she wanted to drive to hop in. I'm going to the port. Will you go there with me? His eyes were teasing, and there was a bit of defiance in his voice. Valancy, who did not conceal from herself that she would have gone anywhere with him to any place, hopped in without more ado. They tore into and through Deerwood. Mrs. Frederick, which is her mother, she never calls her mother in the book, it's always Mrs. Frederick. Mrs. Frederick and Cousin Stickles, taking a little air on the veranda, saw them whirl by in a cloud of dust and sought comfort in each other's eyes. Valancy, and who in some dim pre-existence had been afraid of a car, was hatless, and her hair was blowing wildly around her face. She would certainly come down with bronchitis and die at Roaring Abel's. She wore a low-necked dress, and her arms were bare. That Snaith creature was in his shirt sleeves, smoking a pipe. They were going at the rate of 40 miles an hour, 60, Cousin Stickles averred. Lady Jane could hit the pike when she wanted to. Valancy waved her hand gaily to her relatives, and for Mrs. Frederick, she was wishing she knew how to go into hysterics. Was it for this, she demanded in hollow tones, that I suffered the pangs of motherhood? I will not believe, said Cousin Stickles solemnly, that our prayers will not yet be answered. Who will protect that unfortunate girl when I'm gone? Moaned Mrs. Frederick. As for Valancy, she was wondering if it could really be only a few weeks since she had sat there with them on that veranda, hating the rubber plant, pestered with teasing questions like black flies, always thinking of appearances, cowed because of Aunt Wellington's teaspoons and Uncle Benjamin's money, poverty-stricken, afraid of everybody, envying Olive, a slave to moth-eaten traditions, nothing to hope for or expect. And now, every day was a gay adventure. Don't take that the wrong way, Chad. Lady Jane flew over the 15 miles between Deerwood and the port, and through the port. The way Barney went past traffic policemen was not holy. The lights were beginning to twinkle out like stars in the clear, lemon-hued twilight air. This was the only time Valancy ever really liked the town, and she was crazy with the delight of speeding. Was it possible she had ever been afraid of a car? She was perfectly happy riding beside Barney. Not that she deluded herself into thinking it had any significance. She knew quite well that Barney had asked her to go on the impulse of the moment. An impulse born of a feeling of pity for her and her starved little dreams. She was looking tired after a wakeful night with a heart attack, followed by a busy day. She had so little fun, he'd give her an outing for once. Besides, Abel was in the kitchen, at the point of drunkenness where he was declaring he did not believe in God and beginning to sing ribald songs. It was just as well she would be out of the way for a while. Barney knew Roaring Abel's repertoire. And then they went to the movie. Valancy had never been to a movie. And then, finding a nice hunger upon them, they went and had fried chicken, unbelievably delicious, in the Chinese restaurant. That's right, chat. If you didn't know, we get fried chicken from the Chinese. No, I'm joking. I have no idea why a Chinese restaurant is serving fried chicken. Maybe we did get it from the Chinese. I have no clue whatsoever. That would be hilarious if the Southern people were just like, we're taking this now. We're frying the chicken. We're going to do it better. We got a colonel for this. Right? You know what? I am going to Google it. I'm going to Google it. Second computer, come to my aid. We're going to learn something here. We're learning. Where does fried chicken come from? Come on now, tell me. Fried chicken. It's Scottish and West African, according to Wikipedia. Huh? I'm so confused. Why does a Chinese restaurant have fried chicken? Scottish and West African. The more you know. Okay. Maybe they... No, the funniest version of events here is that they went to the Chinese restaurant and ordered off the kids' menu. They got chicken tenders. They went to the restaurant and ordered chicken tenders. That's the funniest turn of events here. Just out there getting some tendies. Oh, man. After which, they rattled home again, leaving a devastating trail of scandal behind them. Mrs. Frederick gave up going to church altogether. She could not endure her friends' pitying glances and questions, but Cousin Stickles still went every Sunday. She said they had been given a cross to bear. Oh, how awful. How purely terrible. That's the end of that chapter. This is kind of how Montgomery writes. She writes a longer chapter and then a couple of shorter chapters, and then we get back to the long one again. It's about every 5. It makes for a good rhythm for us. Yeah, I've been debating whether or not to share this story, but I will share it real quick. So when I was 18, when I was freshly 18, I had a book that I had been working on for a few years, and I thought it was ready for publishing. Now, I knew my mother would never approve of such a thing because I was writing a romance novel. Not smut, a romance novel. There's a big difference. I knew she would never approve of such a thing. So I went out myself and went to find publishers, and I found one. So, me, feeling delighted and well proven in my thought that I could be an author, went to my parents and told them that I had found a contract with a publishing house. And I showed them the contract, and I explained it to them, and I showed them that it was real. And then my mother forbid it. Now you might ask, why did I let her do that? It's because at the time I was how Valancy was. I was basically just breathing. I was much too worried about what other people would think, and my mother said these exact words: "You're gonna bring shame on the family." So I let her, and I never got published. Fun story. Damn. Yeah, I know. You know the funnier part? I ended up, for my job, moving across the country, away from home. And my mother hates that so much, understandably so. I don't pity her that, and she's become a much better person in recent years. She's really turned around. She actually admitted last Christmas that if she had thought that I was going to leave, she would have let me stay and become an author, because then at least I would have stayed home. Which, man, that hit me. You know what I mean? Curious about the story you wrote? It wasn't anything super special, I'll admit. I've gone back and read it a few times since then. I have the original copy. I still have the email. I could probably reach back out to the house and maybe they would want to publish it. I don't know. But it wasn't anything super special. It was just decent. But decent in a way that was good enough. You know, it would have gotten on a shelf. It would have been not the strongest first entry into the industry, but a decent one. And I could have made myself a happy little life like that. It's interesting to think how things go, you know? I quite like the job I have now, I should say. It fulfills me in a lot of ways, but that one last way, that creative spirit, I feel like it's not getting enough attention. It's something I've thought about a lot, actually. I don't mean to just completely abandon reading. We'll get back to it in a moment, but while we're talking about it, the creative process is an interesting thing, and since we're reading, we might talk writing a little bit. I don't know. I don't think I could recreate that story ever again, or get back into the mindset. I was 16 when I started writing it, finished at about 18. I couldn't get back into that mindset again. I really don't think I could. I was in such a different place in my life back then. Think about it like this. It was a romance novel set in a medieval setting, written by a boy who had never kissed a girl, never even been out on a date. His brothers were far more popular than him. Not that he begrudged them any of that. He rather liked staying home alone. But that's who wrote it. And it made a particularly unique book. I don't think I could write it ever again. I'm much too concerned nowadays, and maybe this is my problem. It was innocent in a sense. And I'm much too concerned nowadays about getting deeper themes into my books, talking about religion and deeper things like that right under the surface. Really, it's just a meta commentary at a certain point. I mean, this persona, Teller, I plucked him out of one of my novels that will never see the light of day. He's literally the son of an angel named Honor. I'm not very good at hiding those themes. Though some people like that. Most stories like that are best-selling, though. That's true enough. But I don't know. I feel like I'm a bit too concerned with not being innocent in my writing. And if I return to that, I feel like I could write something. You can't type well? I completely understand. I feel like I could find something really unique in my writing voice if I allowed myself to be that innocent again. It's just a really hard thing to do. And that's really what I'm jealous of Montgomery for. There's a certain innocence in this story. It's talking about such deep and heavy things in such an innocent way. In an innocent way that's so impactful and meaningful and can connect with people on a deep level. Even if you're not from the backwoods, you know exactly what she's talking about. You know that kind of family. At least a few members of your family are like that, I'm sure, because everyone has them. Everything Valancy's feeling is felt by everyone. And I don't know that I can capture that anymore. Most authors write books without experiencing the events. Well, talk to Rick Riordan. I'm pretty sure he has actually met the Greek gods. Sorry, didn't mean to have an existential crisis on stream. But I thought that was an interesting little aside, talking about innocence in writing and things like that. And giving you guys a little bit of an insight into why I can empathize with Valancy at such a deep level. You can too? Yeah. All right, chapter 23. On one of Cissy's wakeful nights, she told Valancy her poor little story. Oh. So to catch you up a bit, what we know about Cissy is that she went away for a summer to work at a hotel, and she came back pregnant. She gave birth to the child. The child died shortly after, and shortly after that, Cissy came down with consumption. No one knows who the father is. Many people think it's Barney Snaith. And if that's the case, that means Barney pretty much abandoned her. So I guess we're gonna hear that story now. Yeah, sorry, I was sitting on that one. But Valancy doesn't believe that it's Barney. So we're about to see what it actually is. On one of Cissy's wakeful nights, she told Valancy her poor little story. They were sitting by the open window. Cissy could not get her breath lying down that night. An inglorious gibbous moon was hanging over the wooded hills, and in its spectral light Cissy looked frail and lovely and incredibly young. Like a child. It did not seem possible that she could have lived through all the passion and pain and shame of her story. He was stopping at the hotel across the lake. He used to come over in his canoe at night. We met in the pines down the shore. He was a young college student. His father was a rich man in Toronto. Oh, it's not Barney. Right? That's not... I just got to keep reading it. Oh, Valancy, I didn't mean to be bad. I didn't indeed. But I loved him so. I love him yet. I'll always love him. And I didn't know some things. I didn't understand. Then his father came and took him away. And after a little, I found out. Oh, Valancy, I was so frightened. I didn't know what to do. I wrote him, and he came. He said he would marry me, Valancy. And why? Why? Oh, Valancy, he didn't love me anymore. I saw that at a glance. He was just offering to marry me because he thought he ought to. Because he was sorry for me. He wasn't bad, but he was so young. And what was I that he should keep on loving me? Never mind making excuses for him, said Valancy a bit shortly. So you wouldn't marry him? I couldn't. Not when he didn't love me anymore. Somehow, I can't explain. It seemed a worse thing to do than the other. He argued a little, but he went away. Do you think I did right, Valancy? Yes, I do. You did right. But don't blame him, dear. Please don't. Let's not talk about him at all. There's no need. I wanted to tell you how it was. I didn't want you to think me bad. I never did think so. Yes, I felt that. Whenever you came, oh, Valancy, what you've been to me. I can never tell you. But God will bless you for it. I know he will. With what measure you met. Cissy sobbed for a few minutes in Valancy's arms. Then she wiped her eyes. Well, that's almost all. I came home. I wasn't really so very unhappy. I suppose I should have been, but I wasn't. Father wasn't hard on me. My baby was so sweet while he lived. I was even happy. I loved him so much, the dear little thing. He was so sweet, Valancy. With such lovely blue eyes, and little rings of pale gold hair and silk floss, and tiny dimpled hands. I used to bite his satin smooth little face all over, softly so as not to hurt him, you know. I know, said Valancy, wincing. I know. A woman always knows and dreams. Oh, well, he was all mine. Nobody else had any claim on him. When he died, oh, Valancy, I thought I must die too. I didn't see how anyone could endure such anguish and live. To see his dear little eyes and know he would never open them again. To miss his warm little body nestle against mine at night and think of him sleeping alone and cold. His wee face under the hard frozen earth. It was so awful for the first year. After that it was a little easier. One didn't keep thinking this day last year, but I was so glad when I found out I was dying. Who could endure life if it were not for the hope of death? Murmured Valancy softly. It was, of course, a quotation from some book of John Foster's. I'm glad. I've told you all about it, sighed Cissy. I wanted you to know. Cissy died a few nights after that. Roaring Abel, her father, was away. When Valancy saw the change that had come over Cissy's face, she wanted to telephone for the doctor. But Cissy wouldn't let her. Valancy, Why should you? He can do nothing for me. I've known for several days that this was near. Let me die in peace, dear. Just holding your hand. Oh, I'm so glad you're here. All Father could buy for me. He's always been as good to me as he knew how. And Barney. Somehow I think that Barney... But a spasm of coughing interrupted and exhausted her. She fell asleep when it was over, still holding Valancy's hand. Valancy sat there in the silence. She was not frightened or even sorry. At sunrise, Cissy died. She opened her eyes and looked past Valancy at something. Something that made her smile suddenly and happily. And smiling, she died. Valancy crossed Cissy's hands on her breast and went to the open window. In the eastern sky, amid the fires of sunrise, an old moon was hanging, as slender and lovely as a new moon. Valancy had never seen an old moon before. She watched it pale and fade until it paled and faded out of sight in the living rose of day. A little pool in the barrens shone in the sunrise like a great golden lily, but the world suddenly seemed a colder place to Valancy. Once again, nobody needed her. She was not in the least sorry Cecilia was dead. She was only sorry for all her suffering in life. But nobody could ever hurt her again. Valancy had always thought death dreadful, but Cissy had died so quietly, so pleasantly, and at the very last, something had made up to her for everything. She was lying there now, in her white sleep, looking like a child. Beautiful. All the lines of shame and pain gone. Roaring Abel drove in then, justifying his name. Valancy went down and told him, and the shock sobered him up at once. He slumped down on the seat of his buggy, his great head hanging. "Cissy dead. Cissy dead," he said vacantly. "I didn't think it would have come so soon. Dead. She used to run down a lane and meet me with a little rose stuck in her hair. Cissy used to be a pretty little girl, and a good little girl." "She has always been a good little girl," said Valancy. And that's the end of that chapter. I didn't expect her to die for many more chapters. I didn't expect today to take that hard a turn. As the good book says, he cannot come back to me, but I will go to him. I truly believe that thing she saw was her child. Sorry, I'm tearing up a little bit. Forgive me. Yeah. Like hearing that, I would have teared up a bit, but I think it hit me a bit deeper because I was doing her voice. I'm sorry, Kiori. I didn't mean to make anyone cry today. Oh. It's got that odd little pain in my chest. You know the kind? That's good writing right there.